Welcome back to PEP. I'm Sean Donovan, and I've been a vegetarian for 18 years. And one of the first questions I usually get from people when they find out I'm a vegetarian is, where do I get my protein? And that's a valid question because there's a common misconception in our society where people think you can only get protein from animal sources, and that's just not true. So today's video explores this protein myth. Enjoy the video, and don't forget to click the link and to take the validation quiz below. Have a brilliant day. Protein. That's the topic of our nutritional component today. So everybody loves Popeye, right? Pops the can of spinach and muscles come out and capable of doing some amazing things, leaps and bounds. He was one of my favorite cartoon characters as a kid, even before I started loving spinach. But spinach is my potato chip. I'll grab a bag of baby spinach and I will just eat it right out of the bag as if it were potato chips. That's one of my healthy habits that I eat. So next time you're in the store and you're thinking about potato chips, maybe try a bag of spinach instead and see. And kale chips too actually are very delicious too. We have some healthy recipes for kale chips, and they're super easy to make, especially if you have a dehydrator. So. Let's quickly review the 6 nutrient categories of foods. We've covered 5, and the 6th today will be protein. Anybody want to take a stab at listing the previous 5 categories?
Carbohydrates, fats, minerals, vitamins, water.
Bingo, right on point. You know what? Let's see.
Give him a clang.
A vitamin cling. The best vitamin for a happy person is B1. Indeed.
Thank you.
Yep, so William's exactly right. We covered vitamins, minerals, water, fats, and carbohydrates last week with our juicing demo. By the way, did you guys love the juice last week?
It's awesome.
Good. So today we're covering proteins, and proteins are essentially the building blocks of life. So proteins are structural molecules, and they're made up of amino acids, and these amino acids link together to form bonds or longer chain molecules called peptides or polypeptides. So they're essentially about 20 essential amino acids, 9 of which your body cannot make and must get from food. So these structural molecules are essential for all of our structure, our bones, our muscles, our teeth, our hair, our nails, and even our individual cells. The walls of the cells rely on proteins for their structure. So because of this, many people told me that when I decided to go vegetarian 17 years ago, and that was way before being vegetarian was even remotely popular, my mom almost had a coronary because she didn't know how she was going to cook for me, and all my friends I lifted weights with and worked out with, they said, dude, man, your hair's going to fall out, your bones are going to become brittle and break, and your teeth are going to rot out. Well, I'm proud to say 17 years later, I'm 38 years old now, and knock on wood as I say this, but I have never had a broken bone in my body. I've never had a cavity, and despite a very strong genetic predisposition to be bald in my early 20s, I'm hanging on to some hair too, so I just blew that protein myth right out of the water. We covered the protein myth back in week 3, very briefly, but I feel that it's so important, and it is the #1 thing. If you decide to go vegetarian or vegan and you tell somebody, probably the first thing they're going to ask you is, where do you get your protein? Right? So, you know, there's this widespread belief and this common myth. I've heard people say, well, you need to eat your body weight in grams of protein each day. I've heard people say you need 40 to 60% of your calories should be protein based. So I've heard all these different things, and you can do your own research, and depending on the beliefs of the person that did the research, et cetera, that you're going to find all different kinds of thoughts and ideas and philosophy and research that supports all different notions and models. But it is my belief, and through the research that I trust and believe in, that high protein diets can actually do a lot of harm to your body. Digesting proteins, particularly animal proteins I'm referring to here, creates a lot of toxic byproducts in the body, particularly uric acid. They can harm and damage our liver, our kidneys, and our other organs, and throw the pH in our bodies way off, which we talked about the importance of pH a couple of weeks ago. So, you know, how much protein do we need? Like, who can we trust? Like, what would be a reliable source, or what would be an instinctual, a natural source that we can pull? Well, when you think about protein as a building block, as a structural molecule used for growth, you think about the human life cycle. At what point in our life do we grow the most rapidly? Where's our most important growth and development? Anybody? Shout it out.
Babies.
Babies, right? Birth. That's when we're growing the most rapidly. So what would be the perfect baby food?
Mom's milk.
Mother's milk, absolutely. So if we took a look at the composition of mother's breast milk, human breast milk, and we looked at what was in that, should that be a good indication of how much protein that we would need through the rest of our lives? During the period of time where we're growing the most, and that's when we're getting mother's milk, that should be a pretty good indication. So let's look at that composition again. 100 milliliters of human mother's breast milk contains roughly 70 calories, 88% of which is water, 7% carbohydrates derived from lactose, 3.7% healthy fats, and 1.3% protein. Just 1.3% protein to grow us from an infant to a walking, talking toddler. Pretty amazing. Goes back to the protein myth. It does not take a lot of protein to support us, especially once we're already grown and developed. That exception would be if you're trying to be in, Muscle and Fitness magazine, you're trying to be a huge, muscle-bound bodybuilder, you're going to need more protein to build that kind of mass, but it's a very small percentage of people that are trying to accomplish that kind of task. What I would say about protein is one of my quotes that I use quite frequently. Tony Robbins uses it frequently as well, and Adolf Hitler originally said it, that if you tell a lie long enough and loud enough, it eventually becomes the truth. And when you think about who is backing some research and who is putting these thoughts in our head about protein with advertising, etc., it comes back to the meat and dairy industry. And there is an astronomical amount of money in those two industries. I mean, you can't even wrap your brain about how much money. You think about all the chicken wings, all the burgers, all the dairy products that are out there. It's a lot of money spent on lobbying and marketing and advertising to make us think that, oh my God, our teeth are gonna fall out, our hair's gonna fall out, and our bones are gonna break if we don't eat and consume these products on a regular basis. And I'm here to tell you, it's just not true. I'll arm wrestle somebody, can punch me in the stomach and just prove my bones are not going to break. So, think about it logically. Now, the next question that everybody asks me is, well, so where do you get whatever protein you consume as a vegan vegetarian? So I asked them, well, where do you get your protein? My macho guy friends will say, oh, I get it from eating beef, I had a 12-ounce steak last night. And I say, okay, well, where did the 2,400-pound cow get its protein that created that mass that you're now eating? And they stop and think about it, and they're like, well, I guess grass. Right, so if grass and plants can build a 2,400-pound cow, that protein, that structure came from somewhere. I mean, the average human weighs what? Upper hundreds. A cow is 20 times our size, and it got it all from grass. So pretty amazing. So let's do a quick protein comparison. 3 ounces of beef steak contains 21 grams of protein. Now, who eats a 3-ounce portion of steak? Yes. People eat, a much larger quantity of that. But, for apples and apples, we're going to use 3 ounces. So 21 grams of protein, 230 calories, not terrible. 15.2 grams of fat, 6.1 grams of saturated fat, not good. These are the unhealthy fats. 81 milligrams of sodium, and 75 milligrams of cholesterol. Ouch, clogging you up. Now, same 3 ounces of wheatgrass, 1.5 grams of protein. Pales in comparison to the protein in the beef, but what does this remind you of?
The baby.
Milk. Right about the same protein. 21 calories, 0 grams of fat, 5 milligrams of sodium as opposed to 81 milligrams, and not 1 speck of cholesterol to plug your arteries up. Plus, there's no hormones or antibiotics, steroids, no animal cruelty, and the beef industry is the #1 industrial polluter in our country. So there it is, right there. And wheatgrass juice, I'm a huge fan of. I've been doing about 2 ounces of wheatgrass juice virtually every day for the last 17 years. It's an interesting taste. It's an acquired taste. It's not something I would sample at a juice tasting, but Love's right over here in Port Orange or up and Ormond has fresh wheatgrass juice. So does Fresh Healthy Cafe over at the Pavilion if you want to try some. It's a very unique taste, and it is super good for you. In fact, I'm so addicted to wheatgrass juice. When I walk into a place and smell it being juiced, my mouth starts watering uncontrollably. It's like, give me the good stuff, give me the good stuff. So anyway, for what it's worth, that's where I get my protein. So who wants to ask this guy where he gets his protein? Anybody ever seen King Kong? All right, he's at one end of the spectrum, but apes in general are 10 times stronger than a grown human man. And guess what they eat? They're vegetarians. They leaves, sprouts, nuts, seeds, beans, and you know, they're huge and they're strong. They can flip over a car. I mean, it's absolutely incredible. So there's a lot of plant sources of proteins. You know, like you said, the wheatgrass there, dark leafy greens. The darker green, the better. We've got an excellent example of some plant-based proteins growing on the back porches. Anybody seen the tower in the last week? It has gone crazy. And there's leaves on those squash and beans larger than my hand now, and these started out as little bitty seedlings. So there's a lot of protein in those plants. You know, the structure of the stalks and stuff is incredible. But seeds, beans, nuts, even fruits have a small amount of protein in them to some degree. But the interesting thing about the plant sources of protein versus the animal sources is that plant proteins are extremely clean proteins. These proteins are made up of simple amino acids that the body can utilize and assimilate and absorb and utilize right away with very little energy, and there's none of the cholesterol and fats and all the other bad stuff that the body has to contend with digesting and eliminating. Animal proteins, on the other hand, they require a lot of digestion to break down. These are longer chain proteins. They take a lot of energy. They use a lot of our digestive juices, so to speak, and they require enzymes to break these proteins down so that the body can use them. And then on top of it all, the body has to process and digest and eliminate all the cholesterol and fats and all the excess waste.